You probably already knew that Excel can do a lot more than just crunch numbers. In this video, we'll look at a special function called VLOOKUP that is especially good at finding, or as the name implies, looking up information in large spreadsheets. First, let me show you a quick example of what VLOOKUP can do. In this spreadsheet, we've got a bunch of part numbers with their respective names, prices, and availability. If we wanted to figure out how much a part costs, we could scan the spreadsheet for the part number and look it up manually. This is simple in a small spreadsheet, but if you have hundreds or thousands of parts, there's a much easier way. Here in this cell, we can enter the part number, press enter, and instantly Excel shows us the correct price. This is the magic of VLOOKUP, and in the next lesson, we'll see how it works. In the last lesson, we saw how VLOOKUP could be used to look up a price for an entered part number. Now let's take a closer look at the function to see how it works. First, the V in VLOOKUP stands for vertical, which means that you can only use the function in a list or table where the data is arranged vertically, like this data is. If you click in the result cell, in this case cell G3, in the formula bar you'll see the formula used to calculate the result. First, there's the equal sign, which all Excel formulas begin with, followed by the name of the function, which of course is VLOOKUP. Then there's an open parenthesis, and inside are the function arguments. Arguments are simply the values that the function needs to carry out its task. For VLOOKUP, there are 4 arguments. Notice that when I click inside the arguments in the formula bar, Excel shows a tooltip with the name of each argument and also highlights the values associated with the arguments in the spreadsheet. The first argument is the lookup value. This is simply the cell that contains the value you want to search for. In this example, that cell is G2 because it contains the part number that we want to find the price for. Next, there is a comma, which separates each argument. The second argument is called the table array, which is the range of cells or the name of the table that contains your data. In this example, it's the range of data from cell A3 to D52, which is written A3:D52. When you actually enter a formula, which we'll do in the next lesson, you can select this range rather than having to type it. Again, there's a comma to separate the second and third arguments. The third argument is called the column index number, which is the number of the column from the left that contains the result you're searching for. In this case, we want the part price column, which is column C, or the third column from the left. Notice that you use the number of the column, not the letter of the column heading. The fourth and final argument is the range lookup, which must be either true or false. If the lookup value, in this case the value we enter in cell G2, needs to be an exact match, you enter false. If the lookup value doesn't have to be an exact match, you enter true. The way I remember it is EF, or exact false. And finally, the closing parenthesis to close the formula. To get out of the formula bar without making any changes to the formula, just press Escape. In the next lesson, we'll create another VLOOKUP formula for data on this sheet. Now that you're familiar with VLOOKUP and its arguments, let's create a new VLOOKUP formula. First, let's go into Excel Preferences and turn on the Function Autocomplete option to help us write the formula. In Preferences, click Autocomplete, and then check the Show the Autocomplete option if it's not already selected. Now, back on the spreadsheet, let's use VLOOKUP to show the stocking status for the entered part number. First, I'll add a label to this cell. Then, in cell G4, I'll type an equal sign to begin the formula. Notice when I type V, Excel shows a list of function names beginning with V and VLOOKUP is right at the top since it's the one I used most recently. Now I'll press the right arrow and type a parenthesis to begin the arguments. Notice how Excel lists all of the VLOOKUP arguments in the tooltip. Our first argument is lookup value. As in the previous lesson, we want the value that is entered in cell G2. Instead of typing the cell reference, I can just select it. One important note about the lookup value. The value must exist in the leftmost column of your spreadsheet. If the value entered in cell G2 doesn't exist in the leftmost column of the sheet, for this sheet, the part number column, or column A, VLOOKUP will return an error. It doesn't have to be column A, but no data should exist to the left of the column that contains this data. Next, I'll type a comma, and then the second argument, table array, which again I can select from the sheet. Notice that Excel adds the range A3 through D52 to the formula. Another comma, and then the column index number, which is the number of the column that contains the result we're searching for. In this case, it's 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 columns from the left in our table array. Keep in mind that no matter where your data exists on your sheet, the column index number is always the number of columns from the leftmost column of data. Finally, another comma and the last argument, range lookup. Again, we need the part number we entered to be an exact match, so the argument is false. So in English, the formula reads, in the leftmost column of the range of data A3 through D52, look up the exact value entered in cell G2 and return the corresponding value from the fourth column in the data. Now, when I press return, since there's already a part number in cell G2, VLOOKUP returns the correct stocking status for that part. Enter another part number and Excel updates both the part price and status using a slightly different VLOOKUP formula for each result. So those are the basics of VLOOKUP. Be sure to check out the function reference in Excel Help for more information about VLOOKUP as well as other functions that can help you get the most out of Excel.